His fist closed around my rifle strap and yanked, and for 1 second the whole world narrowed to the strip of webbing crossing my chest and the sweating, grinning man who thought he had me. He had no idea what he had just taken hold of. I am going to tell you exactly what went through my mind in that second, because the photographs the world later saw caught everything, except the thing that mattered most. The part where a man learns that the still figure he treated as scenery was the only person at that gate who knew precisely what came next. My name is Corporal Aldous Wren, and that morning I had the side post at the lesser gate of Harrowmere, the king's residence, a place I will not pretend to name truly, since the household I served is not one you will find on any map you trust. The lesser gate is the quiet one. The grand forecourt with its painted railings and its tide of cameras lies around the eastern face of the palace. The tourists go there, the parades pass there, the photographs are taken there. The lesser gate opens onto a narrow service lane between two high stone walls, where the bakers' vans turn in before dawn and the household staff come and go on foot. It is not a glamorous post. It is the post you are given when your sergeant trusts you to stand somewhere no one is watching, and do the job exactly as if the whole nation were. I had stood that lane for 11 months. I knew its sounds the way you know the breathing of someone asleep beside you, the iron creak of the baker's gate at 4:30, the slap of the laundry cart's loose wheel, the bell of the side chapel marking the quarter hours. So I knew, that morning, the instant a sound arrived that did not belong. It was the soft electronic whine of a flash unit charging, a thin, rising hum, the kind that climbs just past the edge of hearing and then snaps silent when the capacitor is full. I had heard it 10,000 times at the eastern forecourt, where it is part of the air. Here, in the empty service lane, it was wrong. It was a sound that meant a man had brought a great deal of equipment to a place where no spectacle was supposed to happen, and that he had brought it on purpose. I did not turn my head. A guardsman does not turn his head. My eyes are trained forward, fixed on a point on the far wall, and the discipline of that stare is not for show. It is so that nothing I see can be read on my face, and so that everything I see is logged without a single muscle betraying that I have seen it. From the corner of my eye, where the trained man keeps half the world, I watched him come. He came around the corner of the lane walking backward, which is its own kind of confession. A man who walks backward into a place is a man who does not want to be followed and does not want his face seen until he chooses. He was perhaps 30, lean, dressed in the deliberately careless way of a man who wants you to think he has not thought about his clothes at all. Over one shoulder hung a heavy black bag, unzipped, bristling with lenses. In his hands was a rig I had only ever seen on the professionals. A camera body braced against a bracket, and mounted above it a bank of 3 flash heads on a curved bar, the kind that throws light hard enough to bleach a face white at 10 paces. The hum I had heard was that bank charging. All 3 of them, pointed when he turned directly at me. He stopped 6 feet away, and looked at me the way a man looks at a vending machine that has taken his coin. "There he is," he said, to no one or to a camera or to whatever audience lived inside his own head. "The statue. They told me you've got a new one tucked back here. Quiet little gate, no minders, no rope line." He smiled, and it was a smile with a great deal of practice behind it and no warmth in it at all. "Just you and me, soldier." I gave him nothing. Not a blink, not a breath out of rhythm. My boots were together, my chin was level, my gloved hands rested on the rifle exactly as the drill demands. To him, I was furniture. To me, he was already a sequence of problems being solved in order. How close he intended to come, what was in the bag besides lenses, which of his hands I would have to account for first, and how many seconds it would take a man at the inner guardroom 40 yards behind me to reach this spot if I gave the signal. I had the answers to all 4 before he finished speaking. That is not bravado. That is what the training is for. The stillness people mistake for emptiness is the busiest thing in the world. He lifted the rig and fired the flashes. The light hit me like a slap made of sun. 3 hard white bursts, point blank, the kind that punches a green hole in your vision and leaves it floating there. He was not photographing me. You do not need 3 heads at full power to photograph a man standing in daylight. He was trying to make me flinch. He wanted the picture of the unflinchable man flinching, the toy soldier blinking, recoiling, throwing up a hand. That picture, he knew, was worth more than any ordinary portrait. It would say, he's just a man after all, and I'm the one who proved it. I did not flinch. I held the point on the wall even when the point on the wall had become a swimming green smear. I let the light come and go and waited for my eyes to clear, and I did not give him the half-inch of movement his whole morning had been built to capture. Behind my still face, I will admit there was a small, cold satisfaction. I had taken worse than a flash. I had stood in the dark of places I will not describe to you, and held a position while things far louder than a camera tried to make me move. A bank of lights was nothing. He saw it on my face, which is to say, he saw nothing, and that nothing told him everything. The smile thinned. A man like that cannot bear to be ignored. Ignoring him is the one wound he has no defense against. He fired the bank again, closer this time, and again I gave him stone. He swore softly, fiddled with the rig, circled to my left to try the light from a fresh angle, and all the while I tracked him in the corner of my eye and counted, and waited, and did not move, because a man who has lost the argument with your stillness will, sooner or later, reach for something he is not allowed to touch. He reached for my rifle strap. I had known he would. I had known it the way you know rain is coming from the smell of the air. When a provoker cannot make the statue move, he decides to move it himself, to grab, to pull, to force the contact that the picture needs. He stepped in fast, hooked his fingers under the diagonal of webbing across my chest, and hauled, and at the same moment thumbed the shutter so that the flashes blazed white over the two of us locked together, the rebel and the statue, the moment he thought would make him. And that is where I began, his fist around my strap, his grin an inch from my jaw, the green ghost of 3 flashes burning the air between us. He thought he had taken hold of a symbol. What he had actually done was lay an unlawful hand on an armed soldier at the gate of the king's house, in front of better witnesses than he knew, and start a clock he could not see. I felt the strap go taut against my shoulder. I felt the rifle's weight shift. And in the cold, ordered quiet behind my eyes, I made the first decision that would end his morning, and a good deal more than his morning besides. I did not pull back. That is the thing they never teach you to expect, the men who grab. They brace for resistance. They lean their whole weight into the pull, because they assume you will haul against them and they will have their picture of 2 men straining, the wild man and the toppling statue. Instead, I gave him no opposite force at all. I let my shoulder yield the half-inch the strap demanded, and not 1 fraction more. So the rifle stayed exactly where my hand kept it, and his hard pull meant nothing but a body that had already accounted for the pull. He stumbled a step toward me, off balance, his grin slipping, suddenly far too close to a soldier and far too unsure what to do about it. There is a rule I have lived by since the first month I wore this uniform, and it is the only sermon I will give you in this whole account, so bear it once. The strength of a guardsman is not in what he does. It is in what he refuses to do while every part of him is screaming to do it. Any fool can swing back at a man who grabs him. A guardsman holds, because the held line is the thing the whole house is built on, and the second he breaks it for his own pride, the man who provoked him has won the only victory that matters. The picture of the soldier swinging is the picture they came for. I would not give it. So I held. My free hand, the left, closed over his wrist where it gripped my strap. Not a blow. Not a twist meant to hurt. A clamp. The flat, certain pressure of a hand that has done this before and is in no hurry, the kind of grip that tells a man through his own bones that the arm he is using does not belong to him anymore. I pinned his hand against my chest so the strap could neither be pulled nor released, and I turned my head, The first time I had moved it in 11 minutes of his circus, and looked at him. I did not glare. A glare is a feeling let loose, and I let nothing loose. I simply looked, level and unhurried, into a face that had expected to find a statue and found instead a man who was entirely awake. Up close I could see what the lens never would, the small flicker behind his eyes when the situation he had scripted began to come apart. He had planned for a flinch. He had not planned for a hand. "Let go of the soldier," I said, quiet, 4 words, the first I had spoken all morning. My voice does not carry far on purpose. A guardsman who shouts has already lost. But he heard it, and so did the air between us, and so, I would learn, did more ears than his. He laughed because laughing was the only move he had left that felt like winning. Or what? He thumbed the shutter again with his free hand, the flashes hammering white across the lane, documenting his own bravado. Or what, statue? You'll stand there harder. Go on, stand. That's all you do. He wrenched his trapped wrist, testing my grip, and found it did not move, and I watched the first true crack open in him. The small, ugly panic of a man who has just understood that he is no longer directing the scene. What he did next is the part the photographs got and got wrong. He let go of the camera with his free hand and reached across with it to grab the rifle itself, the barrel, the stock, anything to make the picture violent, to manufacture the struggle his story needed. A civilian's hand closing on a guardsman's weapon. At the eastern forecourt, that act alone empties the whole gate of guards in seconds. Here, in the quiet lane, it meant something simpler and harder. It meant the line I was sworn to hold was now physically in another man's hands. I moved then, once precisely. I did not strike him. I want that understood plainly, because the men who tell this story in the days after like to imagine a blow, and there was none. I rotated my body a quarter turn, sharply, the way the drill teaches for clearing a oppressive crowd, and the motion did 3 things in the space of a breath. It swept the rifle out of his reaching hand before his fingers found purchase. It turned the weapon's muzzle to safe ground against the inner wall where it pointed at nothing and no one, and it carried his trapped wrist, still clamped in my left hand, down and around so that the arm he had grabbed me with folded behind him, and his own weight pressed it there. He went forward against the cold stone of the gate pillar, not thrown, not hurt, simply guided to the one place where he could do no more harm, his cheek to the granite and his bristling camera rig swinging useless from its strap. The whole movement took perhaps a second and a half. I have done it slower in 1,000 drills and faster in places that were not drills. It is the most disciplined thing a man can do with a body that wants to do something far less careful. Take all the force a fool hands you and spend none of it on him, only on the geometry that ends the threat. "My camera," he gasped against the stone. "You can't. Do you know what that gear is worth? Do you know who I sell to? You just assaulted a member of the press. You tin soldier, I've got it all. I've got every frame." "Stay still," I told him in the same low, even tone. "You're not hurt. You will not be hurt. But you are not going to move until the men behind me say you can." Because there were men behind me now. I had felt the change in the lane before I heard it, the way the air shifts when bodies move into a space that was empty. The signal I had given was no shout and no whistle. It was a single thing, done with my right boot the instant his hand first closed on my strap. I had stamped once, hard, the heel coming down in a sharp double report on the flagstone. To a tourist, it would have sounded like a soldier shifting his stance. To the man in the inner guardroom 40 yards back, watching the lane on a screen he was never supposed to need, it was the oldest signal we have. The post is compromised. Come now, come quiet. He had been moving before the man ever reached for the rifle. I heard the inner door, and then boots, not running. Running tells the enemy you are afraid, but the long, fast walk of men who have done this before. 2 of them. Then the heavier tread of a third, slower, and that one made my spine straighten even with a man pinned under my hand, because I knew the weight of that step the way I knew the bells of the chapel. It was Sergeant Major Croft, and the sergeant major did not come out to the lesser gate for tourists. If Croft was walking into this lane, then someone inside the house had been watching the screen over the duty man's shoulder, and the morning had already grown larger than the small, lean man with his face against the stone could possibly imagine. The paparazzo could not see them yet. He could only feel that the lane had filled and hear the boots, and he made the mistake that men like him always make at exactly this moment. He decided the threat was the soldier holding him, and not the institution arriving behind that soldier, and he started, desperately, to talk his way out. "Listen, listen, soldier, we got off wrong." His voice changed entirely, oiled smooth now, the practiced charm of a man who has talked his way past 100 doormen and barriers and locked gates. "You let me up, we shake hands, I delete the lot in front of you, no harm done, nobody needs to make this a thing. I do the palace beat, I know how this works. You bruise a pressman on the king's own gate, that's the story, that's the headline, and it's your face in it, not mine. So we're friends now, yeah, friends." I said nothing. The two guardsmen took up flanking stations without a word, Privates Ames and Dunlow, both younger than me, both steady, and I felt the situation pass out of the realm of one man's strength and into the realm of procedure, which is where it belonged. A guardsman alone holds the line. A guardsman with his comrades and his sergeant in the lane no longer needs to hold anything by force at all. The line holds itself. Then Croft was there. I did not turn to him. I kept my charge against the pillar and my eyes where they belonged. But I heard him stop a careful distance back, taking in the whole lane the way a senior man does the pinned figure, the swinging camera rig, the heavy unzipped bag spilled on the flagstones, the 3 flash heads still ticking faintly as they cooled. Croft has 30 years in this service and a face that gives away even less than mine. When he finally spoke, it was not to me and not to the man on the stone. It was to the bag. "Ames," he said, "don't touch it, just tell me what you see in it." Private Ames crouched by the spilled bag, hands clasped behind his back like a man at a museum, and read it off. "2 camera bodies, sir. Several long lenses, that's a big one, sir, that's a reach lens. The flash bar," and he leaned, frowning, "there's a smaller pouch, sir, black, got a lanyard hanging out of it, looks like a pass on the lanyard." I felt the man under my hand go rigid. It is a small thing, the way a body changes when a stranger names the one object it did not want named. I have felt it before, in lanes and doorways and rooms in the dark, and it is unmistakable. Up to that instant he had been all bluster and bargaining, a man caught doing a stunt, certain the worst he faced was an embarrassing morning, and a story he could spin to his own advantage. The moment Ames said pass on the lanyard, every ounce of that bluster drained out of him and something else came in. Fear, real fear, the kind that has weight. The kind a man only feels when the thing he was actually here to do is about to be found. "That's nothing," he said too fast. "That's an old pass, that's expired, that's you can't search my bag, you've got no right, I want a lawyer, I want." "Sergeant Major," I said quietly. He came to the lesser gate, backward, with a household pass in his bag he did not want named. I had not stopped thinking, you understand. Behind the still work of holding him, I had been turning it over from the moment I heard the flash charge in the wrong lane, and the pieces had been settling into a shape I did not like. He didn't come back here for a photograph of a guard. There are guards on the east face by the 100, in front of the whole world, easier and better lit than me. He came to the one gate with no cameras and no crowd. The flashes weren't to make me flinch, sir. They were to make me close my eyes. The lane went very still. Even the cooling flash heads seemed to hold their breath. Croft crouched. I heard the creak of his knees, 30 years of standing in all weathers, and I knew without looking that he was looking into the bag, into the black pouch, at the pass on the lanyard. When he stood again, his voice had changed in a way I had heard exactly twice before in 11 months, and both times something serious had followed. "It's a staff laminate," Croft said. "Kitchens, issued 3 weeks ago. Reported lost 2 weeks ago. A pause that lasted a year, and it's been altered. Someone's lifted the access strip off a delivery pass and laid it under this one. This isn't a snapper's pass, Ren. This is a key. Somebody made him a key to the inner service door, and he was going to use the only quiet gate in the palace to walk in behind a guard he'd blinded. Now you understand the second clock, the one I had heard ticking under the first. The grab, the flashes, the whole performance of the arrogant cameraman desperate for a forbidden shot. It had all been the cover. Make the guard at the quiet gate the center of a loud, stupid little scene. Provoke him, photograph him, fill his eyes with light. And in the half-minute of dazzle and distraction, slip a man with a forged key through the service door 3 feet to my right and into the corridors of the king's own house. The arrogance was real. Men who do this kind of work are arrogant to the bone, certain the still soldier is too dim and too disciplined to be anything but a prop. But the arrogance was also the weapon. He had bet his whole plan on my being exactly the empty statue he saw. He had bet that the thing I was trained to be, silent, unmoving, unreacting, meant I was not also, every second, awake. It was the worst bet he could have made. "There's a second man," I said. It was not a guess. The plan only worked with two, one to make the scene at the gate, one to walk the door while the scene held the guard. I had been listening to the lane behind the lane the whole time, the way you listen past the loud thing for the quiet thing, and twice in the last minute I had heard it. The faint scuff of a soul near the service door, someone waiting on the queue that never came, because the queue was supposed to be me with my eyes shut and my back turned, and I had given him stone instead. By the inner service door, Sergeant Major, waiting on a signal from this one. The signal never came, so he's still there and he's wondering why. Croft did not waste a breath. Dunlow, the service door, quiet. Now, and Private Dunlow was gone down the lane at that long, fast walk, and I heard the man under my hand make a sound I will not forget. A small, broken exhale. The sound of a man feeling the second clock he had been so proud of run out beneath him. "You don't know anything," the paparazzo whispered against the stone, but the charm was gone and even the fear had gone flat, the way it does when a man stops lying to the soldiers and starts lying only to himself. "You're guessing. You're a guard. You stand at a gate. You don't." "I stand at a gate," I agreed. "I have stood at this one for 11 months and I know every sound it makes, and you brought one it doesn't. That was your whole mistake. You thought standing still was the same as not paying attention." I eased the pressure on his wrist a fraction, because he was no longer fighting and a guardsman does not spend force he does not need. "Now we wait for the man at the door." And from the far end of the lane, where the service door led into the wall, I heard Private Dunlow's voice, sharp and clear and entirely calm. "Sir, there's a man here. He's got a tool bag and a forged laminate and he's trying very hard to look like a plumber." I will tell you what arrogance sounds like when it finally breaks, because I heard it twice in the next minute. The first was from the man at the door. He had been so sure of the plan that when Dunlow's hand closed on his shoulder, he actually argued the cover story. "I'm here for the boiler, mate. I've got a work order, you can't." Clinging to the lie even after the lie had plainly failed, because admitting it was over was harder than the failure itself. The second was from the man under my hand. He heard his partner caught, heard the whole shape of the morning come apart, and he stopped pretending he had ever been a photographer at all. "It was just a job," he said into the granite. "Not to me. To the stone, the way men confess to walls when the soldiers are too disciplined to look like they are listening. Get past the quiet gate. Blind the new guard, the one with no record, the one they put on the easy post. In and out 10 minutes, nobody touches anybody. They said you'd never even know we'd been." A short, ugly laugh with no humor anywhere in it. "Easy post. They told me the easy post." I had been the easy post. That is the part I have turned over most in the months since, on the nights when a man turns things over. Somebody outside that wall had studied the rota and the rhythms of the house, and concluded that the lesser gate, watched by a corporal of 11 months with an unremarkable file, was the soft seam in the whole armor of the place. They had been right about the gate. They had been wrong about the corporal, and the only reason they had been wrong is that I had treated the quiet post exactly as if it were the loud one, which is the only way a man should ever treat any post he is given. The discipline that bored them, the stillness they sold to their client as a weakness, was the precise thing that beat them. There is a lesson in that I did not have to be taught twice. Croft was on his radio now, low and fast, and I heard the words that told me how large the morning had truly become. Lock the inner service corridor. Hold both men at the lesser gate. Do not move them through the house. Wake the duty officer of the watch and the household's own security men, the quiet ones who do not wear the red. And this was the word that changed the weight of the air. Preserve the equipment. Touch nothing. Photograph the bag where it lies. Bag the camera bodies, bag the flash bar, bag the forged laminate and the tool bag from the door, and let no man wipe a single frame from a single card, because every frame that fool had taken to flatter himself was now evidence of exactly where he had stood when, and pointed at what. My footage, the paparazzo said, hearing it. The professional in him surfaced one last time, the instinct that had run his whole life. Protect the take. The take is everything. That footage is mine, you can't. That footage, Croft said, and his voice was the flat, final quiet of a man who has handled worse than this before breakfast, is the best confession you could possibly have left us. You stood at a king's gate, dazzled an armed guard, laid hands on his weapon, and you filmed every second of it from your own point of view. We don't need to take anything from you. We just need to look at what you already gave us. He let that sit. You're a thorough man. It's a pity you were thorough about the wrong thing. More boots in the lane now, and a different cut of uniform. The household's own men, plain and gray and unhurried, the kind whose names I did not know and whose ranks I was not meant to ask. One of them took a long, careful look at the forged laminate where it lay on the flagstones and said a single quiet word to Croft that I did not catch, and Croft's jaw set, and I understood that whatever this was, it reached further than two men in a lane. A forged key to the inner house is not the work of one paparazzo and one false plumber. Someone had made it. Someone had bought it. Someone had drawn a map of our rota and decided which guard was the gap. That someone was not in this lane, and the morning's true value was not the two men we had. It was the thread that ran out from them to whoever had sent them. But that was not my part, and a guardsman who knows his part is worth more than one who imagines himself the whole army. My part was to hold the man I had, and to give a clear account, and to keep my eyes where they belonged while better-placed men pulled the thread. So when the household men came to take my charge, I did not hand him over until the senior of them gave the word, and when he gave it I released the wrist I had held for the better part of 7 minutes and stepped back to my mark on the flagstone, boots together, chin level, rifle returned to my hand exactly as the drill demands, as though nothing at all had happened in that lane. The paparazzo, lifted off the stone at last, turned his head as they walked him past me. He had got his look at the statue after all. I gave him the same nothing I had given him from the first, no triumph, no contempt, not even the small cold satisfaction I had felt at the start, because by then there was nothing in me to satisfy. There was only the post, and the line, and the quiet that returns to a place once the loud thing has been carried out of it. "You're nobody," he said to me as they took him. "A last, weak swing at the only target left. You'll go back to your gate and you'll be nobody again tomorrow." "That's the job," I said, and I meant it as no insult to myself, though he took it as one. To be nobody, to be the still figure no one thinks twice about, the scenery, the easy post, and to be behind that nothing, entirely present, entirely awake, entirely ready. That is not a smaller thing than being a hero in the headlines. It is a larger one, and it is harder, and the whole house sleeps safer for the men willing to be nobody at the gates no one watches. He would never understand that. Men like him measure a life by how many people are looking. I had spent 11 months learning to be worth something precisely when no one was. They took both of them away, the false photographer and the false plumber, down the service lane and out through the baker's gate to a vehicle I did not see. And the cameras and the lenses and the flash bar and the forged keys went with them in sealed gray bags carried by the quiet men, every frame intact, every card untouched, a confession the thorough man had filmed himself and could not now unfilm. The lesser gate was empty again, and the chapel bell marked the half hour, and the loose-wheeled laundry cart came slapping down the lane on its rounds, as though the world had not just tilted 3 feet from the inner door. I thought it was over, the way you think a thing is over when the noise stops. It was not over. The largest part of that morning had not happened yet, and it would not happen in a lane at all. I stood my post until the relief came at the changing, and I gave my account 3 times that day, once to Croft, once to the duty officer of the watch, and once, in a plain room I had never been in before, to 2 of the gray men, who asked the same questions in 3 different ways and wrote down every answer in a small, even hand. I told it exactly as it had happened, leaving nothing in and nothing out, because the discipline of the report is the same discipline as the post. You give what is true, no more, no less, and you do not dress your own part to look braver than it was. They asked me how I had known the flash was in the wrong lane. I said I had stood the lane 11 months and knew its sounds. They asked how I had known there was a second man. I said the plan only worked with 2, and I had heard the second one waiting. One of them looked up from his small, even hand at that, and looked at me for a moment, and wrote something down that I will never see. What I learned later, some of it told to me plainly, some of it pieced together from the shape of what followed, was that the camera the thorough man had been so proud of did the rest of the work. Every frame he had fired carried, written invisibly into it by the camera itself, the moment it was taken, and a great deal else besides. The gray men read those frames like a diary. They could see precisely when he had arrived in the lane, which told them when the man at the service door had taken his position, which told them the 2 had moved on the same schedule, which told them the schedule had been given to them by someone who knew the rota of the lesser gate. The forged laminate told them more. The access strip lifted from a delivery pass had a number on it, and the number belonged to a contractor's pass, and the contractor's pass led to a name on a list of people who had been inside the service corridors in the past month, and the name led, in time, to the seam in the house's own staff that someone had quietly bought open. The false photographer and the false plumber were not the plot. They were the 2 threads sticking out of it, and a man had pulled hard on a guard's rifle strap that morning and pulled the whole thing into the light. Both men were charged. I will not pretend to recite the law of a household I have asked you to leave unnamed, but it came to this: laying hands on an armed guard at a royal gate, the forgery of a household credential, and the conspiracy to enter the king's residence by deception. The thorough man's own footage was the spine of the case against him, played back frame by careful frame, his arrival, his backward walk, his 3 bursts of light fired point-blank at a soldier's eyes, his hand closing on a rifle strap, all of it filmed from his own vantage, all of it sworn to by the man who had been so eager to film himself. He had wanted a picture of the unflinchable man flinching. What he had made instead was a complete and unanswerable record of his own crime, shot in high resolution, time-stamped, and unwiped. There is a justice in that I find I never tire of. The vain so often build the case against themselves and call it a portfolio. The equipment never went back to him. The camera bodies, the long lenses, the flash bar that had tried to blind me, the bag and the tool bag and the forged keys, all of it was confiscated, logged, and held, and I am told the reach lens alone was worth more than I make in a year. He had been right about one thing in the lane. He had no idea what that gear was worth. He had simply been wrong about who would end the day holding it. When a man tells you he knows how this works, listen closely. He is usually about to be taught how it actually does. As for the easy post, there is no easy post anymore at the lesser gate, and there should never have been. The The rota was rebuilt. The screen in the inner guardroom that someone had treated as a formality became a thing that was truly watched. The service door 3 feet from my mark was given a lock that a lifted access strip cannot open, and a second man now stands the inner side of it through the daylight hours. I would like to tell you the house thanked me for that, with a ceremony and a ribbon and my name read out, but that is not how this service works, and it is not what I would have wanted. What happened instead was quieter and worth far more. 3 days after, at the changing of my watch, Sergeant Major Croft fell in beside me as I marched off, which a sergeant major does not do without reason. He said nothing about the lane. He said nothing about the 2 men or the gray men or the thread that had run out from a forged key into the dark places of the house. He simply walked the length of the courtyard at my shoulder, in step, and at the door to the guardroom he stopped and turned and looked at me the way one soldier looks at another when the words would only cheapen it. "You stood your post, Wren," he said. That was all. 4 words to answer the 4 I had spoken in the lane. To a man outside this service it would sound like nothing, like being told water is wet. But there is no higher thing one of us can say to another, and Croft does not spend it cheaply. In 30 years he has spent it, I am told, on a handful of men. He gave me a short nod, the kind that closes a matter for good, and went back inside, and I marched on to my quarters with my chin level and my face still and something in my chest that I will not try to name, because naming it would be the kind of indiscipline the whole morning had been a lesson against. I am back at the lesser gate now. Not the easy post, there is no easy post, but the quiet one. The one that opens on the narrow lane where the bakers turn in before dawn, and the laundry cart slaps down on its loose wheel, and the chapel marks the quarters. I stand it exactly as I stood it the morning the thorough man came around the corner walking backward, certain he had found a statue he could move. My boots are together. My chin is level. My gloved hands rest on the rifle as the drill demands, and my eyes are fixed on a point on the far wall, and to anyone who passes I am furniture, scenery, nobody. Tourists who wander down by mistake still raise their phones and try to make me blink, and I give them the same stone I gave him, and they go away thinking there is nothing behind it. Let them think it. The stillness is not emptiness. It never was. Behind this unmoving face I am counting the sounds of the lane, accounting for every hand, awake to the half-inch of wrongness in the air, because that is the post, and the post is the line, and the line is the thing the whole house is built on, watched or unwatched, applauded or alone. A man came once to teach the world that the still soldier was a weakness to be exploited. He learned, with his cheek to the granite and his own camera turned against him, that the still soldier was the one thing in that lane he could not move, could not blind, and could not get past. He wanted the flash that would make him. He bought himself a cell instead. And I went back to my gate the next morning, nobody again, exactly as he promised, and the house slept safe behind me, exactly as I had sworn it would.